In this video, we're gonna go over the style board of Webflow. We're gonna get down to the basics, the nitty gritty, and just go over the basic tools that you can use to implement on your elements and how they can affect those tools. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you wanna learn about Webflow, stick around. What's up, everyone? Quick intro. My name is Abrot. I am the founder and creative director at Abrot Creative, a design agency for faith-based ministries and nonprofits. And I encourage you to check out my Instagram and even on YouTube. I like to teach about the process and the business of web design. Pretty much how you can learn how to make websites and learn how you can make a living and make some money making websites. We're gonna get right into the tutorial. I went ahead and set up some elements on our Webflow dashboard here so that we can properly explain what can be done with all these elements and what the style guide or the style board can do with all these elements. Now, real quick, websites are pretty much the function of basic websites are two pages. There are HTML and CSS. Those are really the two pages that make up a website. Now, there are other two things on the back end like JavaScript, PHP, and all those things, but a basic website can be made with just HTML and CSS, right? HTML is pretty much the content of the website, or it's going to be on the website. And then CSS is the style and how it looks. So HTML is what's in it, and then CSS is how you control how the website looks. So in Webflow, what they did, which is really cool, is they pretty much broke it up. This plus button, and this is how you add your different elements over here. And I went ahead and added some elements so that we can control the style. And the right side, this whole side right here, is pretty much CSS. That is your style board where you can control different ways your elements can look. So we're going to go over the different ways, the different styles, different tools, buttons in this style board, because at first glance you're gonna think it looks kind of complicated, but it's actually really not. Especially if you played with design software like Photoshop, Illustrator, and things like that, it's actually very easy. So let's first of all look at this. I'm gonna have to put some elements here so we can control it. Let's look at first of all the layout and the display. Actually, we're gonna first of all look at up here. This is the style naming. Now, I'm one of those, I love to name my styles. You can name your styles here so that it controls every single, when you change one thing, it'll change the other thing as well. This helps keep your website more consistent, helps the look to stay consistent, your headers, your paragraphs, your containers, even the same width. You don't want to have inconsistencies in your website, even as far as the padding. What's cool with this, if there's something that you want to change, let's say in this one you want to affect only this element but not the other elements that have the same style, you could just click on the right side and add a new style, you know. So just type up and then you have a new style, and that will be affecting only that element that has these two styles. So we'll talk more about those maybe in another video. Let me know if you have any questions about that one specifically and how you can use that to your advantage. So let's look at the layout here. The default type of layout you have for the display is a block element. What this does, pretty much every single element will be will take up the whole width of the container. So we can't put this on the right side, it's not going to work. It's all just boom, 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 boom. It's very basic. You know, every single element goes underneath each other. And then you have what people like to use is a flex element. Now the flex element is pretty cool. What it does is it modifies the content to fit it the best way that it could, and this makes it a little more modifiable. Now some people may have a hard time with this. It's actually pretty simple. Notice the direction. You could change up the direction. Right now there's a horizontal direction. We could make it a vertical direction. Now with horizontal direction, look what you can do. You can change up the alignment. You can make it a center align where every element is center aligned. You can make it a bottom align. I'm gonna tell you right now, this center align thing for some reason is so hard in regular CSS coding. Maybe there's an easier way. If you're a coder out there and you figured out an easier way to do this center align thing vertically, let me know. But I've always had a hard time with them. But this center align, you could just do that. You can make it bottom align, or you could also even do it the other way, vertical. You can make it center align, right align, so on and so forth. You can justify it. You can have the children, this children don't rap and rap. It's all about the other the elements inside, how it affects the elements. It's kind of like the elements within those elements. Okay, you can explain. Google it. You'll explain what children mean. So these are the kind of different elements there, and then we'll look at grid. I'm sorry. This grid style is pretty awesome as well. Whenever you want to put multiple elements, I recommend using grid. With this one, we have a 2-column, 3-row, I believe, but you can modify it. You could just make it 1 row. You could just make it 1 column. Right now, it's set it to that because there are multiple elements. So you're able to do that. The best way to do this is put divs within these columns, and then you can put multiple things, and you're able to lay out the grid in a certain way. You can even edit the gap or the gutter, what some people call it, different widths and all those things. And then we have inline. What inline does is if a container is inline, and let's say if I add something here, I'm going to show you what inline is really quick. So let's say I add a div right around here, right? I will put it underneath this container. And then let's say we're going to make this inline as well. Notice now it's on the right side of this div. Inline pretty much means, so I'm going to make this, let's say 1,000 pixels high, and you'll see it right here. Oops, I made it 10,000. That's not right. You know what, let's just do 100. There you go. That's about a lot better. And now the div is actually, you're able to inline it and make it all next to each other. So that's what inline pretty much means. So let's go back to the way it was. And then this was pretty much the same, but except more for text. And the last one is this one, which is a no display. It just straight up hides it. It's as if it doesn't even exist, okay? Those are, sometimes people use that for like mobile view. When there's something that they wanted to show on desktop, but they don't want to show it on a phone view, you can do that non-display, which is really a very, very useful tool. So let's look at the spacing. Spacing is fun. What you can do here is you have the margin and the padding. If you don't know what it is, margin is pretty much what's outside the box, and the padding is inside the box. So for example, if I have this, oh, my phone turned on. If I have this phone, the margin is the distance outside. So how far my finger is from the phone, that's margin. The padding is how far my finger is inside the phone, and that is padding, okay? So as you notice here, I can make this whole container. Let's look at this one. Yeah, that's it, the container. I can make this container on the top, just go down 50 pixels, boom, right? Or I can make the element inside go down 50 pixels. And you can do that all around. That's a very useful tool, especially when you want to put padding inside your section. There are different integers you can use. There's pixel, there's percentage, there's EM, which is more like a relative, viewport width, viewport height. We don't have time to talk about that right now. Check out my Instagram. I actually have some posts explaining what padding and margin is and what these different size units mean, and even what the different positions mean. So check out my Instagram and you'll see those. Now let's look at size. Size is pretty much just being able to modify the size of your elements. This can be good for pictures or even containers. Now this container, you can't change the width of this because a container is locked. I think it's about 960 pixels. They make that so that the browser is able to, mobile responsive and all those things. But you can always just make it a div and make your container even wider. So, but let's look at this image. I'm gonna change the width of this image. Notice you can make it, I can make it 400 pixels, right? I can make the height 100 pixels, and there you go. Of course, it tries to keep it as proportionate as possible. You don't want stretchy images, okay? Now, if I were to, let's say, take this out, well, I mean, I can't do it right now because there's no image, but you kind of get what I mean. What's cool about this, you could even do like a minimum height, a maximum height, and that will be affected by the different browsers, okay? So let me undo that. So these are just the different sizes you can do with that. An overflow is how an element looks when it goes past a certain container, sometimes even past your browser. You can make it that if it's bigger than the container, it doesn't show, or it does show. I'll give you an example. So we're now in the overflow section here. Let's say you click heading, and let's say I make this super big. I'm gonna make it 500 pixels. That's a big word, right? So right now the overflow is, you can see it, it's visible. But we can make it not visible, and notice it only shows what's inside the container. Or we could also make it this way, where because it's bigger, it has a browser, and I could actually look inside, so I can kind of see the whole element somewhat, right? So that's how you do overflow. Different ways you can use that. You could get creative with that. And then fill would be just how fit would be just how it fills, how it fits inside it, contain, cover, all that stuff. So let's look at position. Position is something sometimes that people don't understand. I myself had a difficult time understanding it, but let me just break that down to you real quick. Position is how it's positioned in the website, obviously. Static is pretty much the default. It's just static. It's just how it is. This is me. Accept me for who I am. You know, that's static. Can't really change anything. Relative, it's pretty much the same as static, except now you can kind of nudge it a bit, okay? You can make the position maybe 10, it kind of nudged a bit. It's almost like margin and padding, but what's cool about this is you could do what you call a Z index. You can make the Z index 1, 2, you can go all the way. I know someone who always does it where it's like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Whatever you want to do with that. As long as the number is higher, it will always be on top of it. That's very useful when you want to overlay elements, like overlay images, overlay text. If something's on top of another, you want to make the one underneath in the back would be a number 1, and the one in front would be a number 2. You get what I mean? So that's relative. Absolute, this is the rebel. Like absolute, if you just click this, it's going to do its own thing. It's not even going to submit to the container. See? There you go. All right. I can put it here. I can put it there. I can put it here, here, all that stuff. Those are really cool. Those are good for stuff like images, like in the background. You want it to be at a certain spot. Then fixed is that no matter how much I scroll, it's going to stay in this one spot. And then sticky would be pretty much like, this is kind of useful. It's kind of complicated, but like as you scroll down, it sticks to it, and you can make it stick at a certain point and then unstick. We can go on and on about that. Some people find some really useful uses for that, and you're gonna see some cool websites that use that. Okay, now typography should be very simple. If you even use Microsoft Word, you know what this means. Okay, size, height, color, alignment, style, direction, more type options. You have more options here. You can even put text shadows. I don't need to explain that furthermore. If you want me to explain typography to you here, let me know. I'll probably make a video about it, okay? Now, the background. The background, we can control the background of this container. So we can make it a different color. Right now it's transparent. We can make it red. We can make it blue, whatever. What's cool about this, you can even save colors. So if you have a certain style guide or a color guide, you can save those colors here, so that you'll be able to use colors consistently, okay? I just realized that I have a light on top of me, but I'm wearing a hat, so my light is just useless. Anyways, so let me undo that one. And you could also even put an image as a wallpaper. So right now there's no image, but you can put a background image there. You can make it tile, you can make it cover, you can make it contain, you can make it a gradient or some other type of gradient, or you know, a full color with opacity or whatever. You can even move around the picture inside. You could make it fixed, where, excuse me, fixed is pretty much if you scroll down, the picture stay fixed. So you can do many things with that. It's pretty simple. I encourage you, by the way, for those of you, you can watch this video, but you will really learn this if you just play around with it. That's how I learned. Just play around with the software. You'll find it very useful. All right, we are almost done. We're at the home stretch. So the borders, these are pretty much the type of images. Let me put a shape. Maybe, can I put a shape? Am I able to do that? Possibly not. But let's say I put a button. All right, there you go. That might help. So let's say I put a button text right here. What are you inline? Oh, there you go. Okay. So let's say I put a button text on the bottom. Hey, get in there. There you go. I can make it where the radius is, notice how the button radius is being affected, right? So that's kind of the radius there. I can add a border around it, like a black border. And see what I mean? And you could even make it just a, let's say you want to make it just a top border. So let's go boom, just the top border. As you can see, all that stuff. So you can do some really cool things with that. Opacity. So what we're gonna do right now, we're gonna make this, opacity is pretty simple. You can control the opacity, okay? Box shadows, you can add a shadow on this thing, add a shadow on whatever really things you do. Then that's a new thing, 2D and 3D transforms. I think they just renamed it. Oh, it's a transform, pretty much. Transform is if you want to move it to the right, move it to the left. If you want to move it down, move it up, the whole thing. These are useful for like hover effects, and I'll show you how you can even do a hover effect later on. These are more like in this one like a 3D perspective. It's the same, they kind of just named it. Scale would be if you want to make it bigger, you want to make it smaller. Rotate, you can rotate it. Oh, oops, that's not it. So let's do this one. Let's do this one. So let's say you want to rotate this. Okay. Oh, that's the x-axis. Oh, that's not the rotate. I'm sorry. That's if you want to stretch it. Stretch it down, stretch it right. Okay. Squeeze it. That's not bad. And then rotate it. And then skew. I don't need to go over every little thing. Now transitions are cool. What it is if on a new, let's say on a hover effect, you want to have a transition, you can make a different transition. You can do opacity. What I like to do is just go all properties and just whatever, any changes, there's a transition there. And then filters, that could be for like images. If you want to add a blur effect, brightness, grayscale, you can do all those things with that. And then the cursor, that's actually pretty cool. I'll just do this, show you guys this real quick. So let's say I want to do a cell on this image, right? When I preview it, all I have to do when I hover it, now it's a cell. So some people like to have some different cursor ideas so they can make their website unique. One last thing that I forgot, and then I will be pretty much done, is right here. If you notice, there's an arrow button on the top layer kind of style control, and then you could actually click that, and those are the different states: hover, pressed, focus. You can make it so that, let's look at this button, right? So that when you hover over it, it changes. So if we're gonna click hover, I'm gonna change the background to like a greenish blue, okay? And then you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna add a transition. So notice right now it goes back, but if I hover over it, look at that, it changes color. But let me show you the transition, how you can use that. If you go to the original state, add a transition, make it all properties, and let's say I want to make it 400 milliseconds. Now your transition is a lot smoother. So that's how you can use transition. I think I pretty much covered all of the style elements that you can do. There's so much more you can do with Webflow. I encourage you to open up, check it out. An account is actually pretty free. And by the way, I'm going to have a link in the bottom. If you sign up with Webflow using any of my links, it helps me feed my family. If you enjoyed that video, if you learned something, you better press that like button and make sure you press that so much, smash it, just obliterate that like button. Actually, wait, time out. Don't, make sure you press it an odd number of times, okay? You don't want to press it an even amount, because like, for example, if you press it twice, then you like it and unlike it. So you either want to press it 1 time or 3 times or 5 times or 7. you get the picture. So make sure you click that like button, and also you gotta subscribe. You gotta subscribe. You gotta see our weekly content. It's gonna be a help to you if you're a web designer, if you like to use Webflow, if you want to learn how to get clients, especially our last video last week. Check it out right here in the link on top, how you can get your first client. That would be help to you. Until next time, I hope you learned something. Peace out.